Oh, I see it's 6 o'clock. So are we good to go, Madison? What the heck is streaming live on Facebook? I had a sign over your face there, Madison. We're good to go. All right. I just got the thumbs up to let us know that we're live. If anyone doesn't know me, my name is John Gilbert. I'm the person with the privilege to be the board chair of the South Bruce Cray Health Center. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the Chesley Emergency Department Community Information Session and our update on the reduced hours of operation for this evening. I'm joined on our panel this evening with Dr. Jackie Wong, who is the physician site chief here in Chesley. I believe, yes, there he is, Dr. Adam Winterton, who's probably the person who least needs an introduction in Chesley. Mike Barrett, who you all know is our president and CEO. Angela Stanley is with us, Vice President, Clinical Services, Chief Nursing Executive for our hospital. Stephanie Metcalf, Patient Care Manager with our hospital. Sharon Michelle, the Physician Recruitment Committee Chair. Steve Schaus, Bruce County Paramedic Services Chief of Operations. And I didn't see Kevin, but he's supposed to be on board. Kevin McNabb, Director of Grey County Paramedic Services. Those are the people here to present to you this evening and participate in this presentation. We'll get things kicked off right away, and I'll hand over the floor to Mike Barrett, our President and CEO, to give you an overview of the current issues and the current status. All yours, Mike. Thanks.
Thanks very much, John. So as John said, I'll give an overview of the where we stand with the reduction in hours in the emergency department in Chesley. Won't spend a lot of time on the background, but just talk about some of the actions that we're taking going forward. And then Angela and Stephanie are going to really talk about the initiatives that we've undertaken to try and get us back to that 24/7 operation. And then we'll turn to Dr. Jackie Wong and Dr. Adam Winterton for their input as physicians. And then as we've done in the past on these community sessions, we will open it up for any comments or questions from the community. And I'll walk you through a bit in terms of the steps we need to take with Zoom and with the Facebook Live. So our goal throughout this is to return the Chesley Emergency Department back to 24/7 operation. So that's been the goal since day one, back in September 2019, when the reduction first went into place, and has been the goal of our board since that time. So just some process pieces before we get into the content tonight. For those of you that have not used Zoom before, I'll just go through and hopefully I see some familiar faces on here from our last session. You're familiar with what you need to do to have your questions answered and to hear and make sure you're muted properly. So if you just hover your mouse over your screen close to the bottom, a menu bar will pop up. You'll see that menu bar, which is the black line that's got the unmute and start video buttons. Can you please go so that you mute your microphone just to reduce background noise so that whoever's speaking, the other people can hear them clearly. And the video is, if you want your camera on, just have it so that the video is on versus the prohibited line that you see on the screen now. And it would be great if we could see everyone's face, if you've got the ability to have the camera, and then we can see people's reactions and questions as we speak, and it makes it easier for us to gauge what the community is feeling and thinking as we go through the presentation. And then if you want to ask a question of the group, so this is what we did last time as well, on that black menu bar, there's a button called chat. Click on that button and a chat box will pop up on the screen. And you can type in, it'll say, ask you what your question is, who you can direct it to, and type in your question there. And then that way, as we go through the presentation, we can start to address your questions. And we will read out every question that's on the chat box. And the reason for that is that we also have Facebook Live, where this is being broadcast over Facebook Live at the exact same time as the Zoom call, but those folks on Facebook Live can't see the chat box. For people that are phoning in, because there's a third option where people can phone in. If you don't have a mute on your phone, please use *6 to mute and unmute. And that ensures that, again, we want to make sure that everyone is muted except for the speaker. And if you have a question, press *9, and that allows you to raise your hand virtually so that when the questions are coming in, we can recognize you and you'll be able to answer that or ask that question. And again, as I said, the session is being recorded and broadcast on Facebook Live. If you remember back to our September session, we did that and recorded it and posted it on our website. So anyone that doesn't have the chance to participate in tonight's call can go back and look at the presentation and look at the questions and answers. We want to make sure that, again, we're as open and transparent as possible with the community. And this is our fourth now, I guess, session that we've had. And we want to make sure we continue to keep that open, transparent conversation with the community. So with all that, we'll jump right into the content that we want to present tonight. As I said, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the background. I think probably everyone around this table understands the situation. The emergency department remains open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then closed overnight from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. The ambulance is on bypass from after 7:30 p.m. So someone who's will be transported to those emergency departments that are in the closest 24/7 emergency departments. And as probably everyone around this table knows, to return to that 24-hour service, we require RNs with emergency department experience that are confident in their skills and abilities to safely operate the department during those overnight hours when there are limited staff in the building. And the key point here is that at this time, our nursing staff resources have not stabilized enough to return to 24/7 operation. So, those of you that participated in September, that our goal was the spring of this year to get back to that 24/7 operation. And we'll talk to you about what the current situation is and then the actions we're taking to get back to that. But at this stage, we are not in a position to do that. So just a quick overview of the volumes of visits to the emergency department in Chesley. And the screen may be pretty small on your computer or your phone, so I'll just give you the kind of the highlights here. This is the 12 months of the year. So on the left is September, on the right is August, and then the total patients per month. So the blue line is the year before we reduced the hours in the emergency department. So from September 2018 to August 2019, just before we went to those reduced hours, you can see the number of patients in that year varied between 500, 550, up to 600 in May. Back in July, it was high as well. You go to the next year, starting in September 2019, which is the green line. So again, September on the left, August on the right, where we went to the reduced hours. You can see they're slightly less. In January, the number was actually very close for a 12-hour operation versus the 24. But then when the pandemic came, you can see the big drop in that green line. So in April, we went down to 180 patients in the month, whereas the previous year was 536. Started to crawl back up throughout the summer as things were looking better on the COVID front. And then you look at the gray line, which is just the first 4 months starting in September 2020. Again, you can see the numbers have dropped again. And with wave 2 coming in, and this is not unique to us, it's all emergency departments across the province and across Canada have seen a real reduction in volumes. So I mentioned briefly the recruitment and retention challenges still exist. And just to give you some perspective on the provincial picture, all health organizations across the province, hospitals, long-term care homes, family health teams, community mental health and addictions are facing human resource challenges, health human resource challenges, particularly on the nursing side. And we had an update from the Assistant Deputy Minister of Health back in December, and he gave a stat that was startling for us, is that 4 of the large Toronto hospitals have 940 nursing vacancies. So in 4 hospitals, the 4 big hospitals, 940 vacancies. Grand River to the south and Kitchener-Waterloo, 160 between RNs and RPNs, nursing vacancies. So the situation is certainly challenging right now, and especially during COVID, has made it considerably more challenging around the staffing front. And one really good piece of good news that I'll leave you with, and then I'll pass it over to Angela and Steph to talk about what we're doing in the Clinton site. In the Chesley site, had Clinton on my mind as I was about to start this slide. The Clinton Emergency Department is in the exact same situation as us. They are on reduced hours, only operating 12 hours a day. So we've been working closely with the Here in Perth Healthcare Alliance, which is the 4-site hospital in Stratford, Seaforth, St. Mary's, and Clinton, about how we address these challenges, because we're in the exact same boat, trying to find nurses, making sure we've got the nurses to fill those, to operate the emergency department. So myself and the CEO from the Here in Perth Healthcare Alliance met with the Assistant Deputy Minister of Health in early December and talked to him, updated him on the situation that's going on in Chesley and Clinton. We talked a lot about what's causing it. He wanted to know what some of our solutions were. And he asked that we submit a proposal for funding that could be included in the provincial budget to support the reopening of those small emergency departments. So that's a really good sign, because if the ministry was, if they just wanted to listen, they could have listened, but he asked us to submit this proposal. So Angela Stanley, who you're going to hear from shortly, and her colleague from here in Perth have done a lot of work to develop this proposal with the site chiefs. So Dr. Wong, her counterpart in Clinton, Dr. Roth, our chief of staff, and staff from both of our organizations have pulled that together, and it covers everything from nursing recruitment and retention, the new nursing grad initiative, lots of different pieces that we're pulling together, and we haven't submitted it yet. It'll be probably the end of this week when we submit that. So some good news on the horizon there, that there's interest from the ministry, and they do want to ensure that we get back to opening those 2 emergency departments to 24/7 operation. And I'll pass it over to, Audrey, to Angela, and let her walk you through the steps that we've been taking to get us back to 24/7 operation.
Thanks, Mike. So since we last met in September, we've made some progress towards our professional practice model and accomplishing our goals of staffing. And we regularly at each board meeting report to the board or update of progress. So board members and our board have eyes on this on a regular basis with expectations of reporting. Next slide, Megan. So in September of last year, we presented to you some of the initiatives that we've undertaken, and you'll recall that we implemented the charge nurse role. We implemented the professional practice and education coordinator. That happened in the summertime. We've increased our RN pool, improving some flexibility. And with the increase of that pool, we actually created some additional full-time lines for RNs and for RPNs. We've also been able to really utilize our higher volume emergency departments, so Walkerton and Kincardine, to support our novice nurses to gain additional skills. If you'll recall, we had a significant ask from our RPN group to move to 12-hour shifts, so we were able to implement that. HR is doing regular touch points with staff, and then we have our professional practice working group. So what have we done since September? Really and truly, it's about continuing those strategies that we implemented in September. So in January, we're continuing to look at our enhanced competency model. We are putting in some additional structural supports for practice, and some of those include the internal hiring of CTAS instructors, so RNs being trained to train on CTAS. That's how we triage patients in our emergency department. So we have readily accessible courses for our staff, plus they're a good key resource to support novice nurses. We are also looking at bringing in-house ACLS instruction. So we are doing a lot of work related to the courses that we require for staffing to make it more readily available for nurses at Southbridge Grey. We continue to do an ongoing review of vacancies and scheduling opportunities. And I want to make sure that we understand this one. We've had a lot of changes in our scheduling structurally, and that was with the creation of full-time lines. I suspect we will have another sort of blitz of creation of full-time lines, which again will create some instability in movement, but it's all in the name of putting something stable in place for the future. One of the big pieces of work that we've done in our socializing and making sure that our nurses are aware of expectations is the development of roles and responsibilities for team leads, charge nurses, and managers. And this took a great deal of work. This was a piece of work that the Professional Practice Working Group did. And there's a lot of additional items on that that really outline the accountability of each of these structural supports from a leadership perspective, which is really quite good news for us. Next slide, Megan. So in terms of our pathway to reopening, September 2019, this is what the picture looked like for us when we decided to reduce hours. So we had 3 full-time RN vacancies with a significant amount of sick time. We had very limited part-time staff to fill shifts, and our new nurses were extremely novice, so typically straight out of school, and they couldn't work independently in the emergency department. In September 2020, we've gone down to 2 FTE of RN vacancies, so that's full-time equivalents. We implemented the charge nurse. Our incidental sick time for registered staff has improved or had improved. We had more availability of coverage for our shifts, and our new novice nurses were working through their competency model, but still are not ready to move into the emergency department. In January 2021, we've actually reduced our vacancies to 1.5 full-time equivalents. That's a combination of 2 part-time and 1 full-time dual site position. We have, back in September, we had 3 full-time equivalents off on a sick leave. We now only have 1. We've had limited movement so far in our registered staff pool, although that's subject to change just based on some additional postings that we'll have. The charge nurse is really coming into her own in terms of her role, highly supportive of the staff, working well. She's been a fantastic addition. Accountability for culture has been embraced. So we're starting to work with nurses on ensuring that the culture at Chesley is what we want it to be on a go-forward basis. Again, we have more staff available to cover shifts, and novice nurses are starting to build confidence to shift towards intermediate nurses. Next slide, Megan. So this is a pretty busy slide. I'll go through it. One of the questions that we've been asked is what have our movement been within the organization? So since September of 2020, the first couple of bullets are very important. We've actually not been able to hire any external RNs. And I think that really speaks to the provincial picture that Mike mentioned. And again, we've not hired any external RPNs, although we've been able to move staff around from sites. Movement of existing staff between Southbridge Grey sites. There has been a great deal of movement between our sites, and that has really been as a result of the creation of new full-time lines and different full-time lines. So typically anytime a full-time line is posted, there's 2 to 3 additional movements that happen in our registered staff pool because other positions become available when successful applicants are put in. So when we say there's 1 movement, it typically triggers 2 or 3 additional postings as we go forward. We have 2 of our regular part-time RNs in Chesley that moved into temporary full-time lines. That happened in November, and that was really to support the sick leaves that we were experiencing with our 3 full-time staff off. It also provided the opportunity for those part-time RNs really to gain a lot of hours. We did create a new full-time line. That's a full-time line dual site between Durham and Chesley. And that nurse will be coming to us in June of 2021 once she returns from having a baby. We've also been able to create 2 RPN lines that are full-time dual site. And I will get this wrong, so Stephanie, please correct me. One is Chesley Durham and one is Chesley Kincardine, I think. Oh, I got it right. So again, these are new full-time lines that were created. When we looked at our structure and our schedule, we decided that we actually needed to improve additional or increase our full-time lines. From September 2020, we've had 2 RNs exit from South Bruce Grey Health Center and 2 RPNs exit from South Bruce Grey Center. And these are from the Chesley site. So they actually did not move within our organization. They actually stepped out of the organization. And the resulting vacancies are there. Some of the reasons for the exits, and a lot of times there's multiple, but the one that we're hearing primarily is they're moving for full-time employment. And that is the reason why we have undertaken the development of full-time lines. To the best of our ability, we wanted to create additional lines to keep people within the organization. Full-time employment for one of the nurses with public health, which is always quite appealing for nurses because it's typically a Monday through Friday job, and it's not shift work. The other position that a nurse left for was the family health team. And then of course, we know that there's proximity to home. So we've had a couple of nurses who've moved closer or have taken positions that are closer. And then there's also fit with patient population. So that's a factor that we have to consider. And there's been movement from when we initially hired nurses back in 2017. Sometimes there's just not a fit with rural nursing. And that's what's happened for some of our staff that have exited. Next slide, Megan. We wanted to give you an update on transitions from our novice nurses to intermediate. So at this point in time, we have 3 novice nurses, and this is the planning that we have in place for them in order to move them into an intermediate stage. So our first nurse has completed 86% of her courses that are required from ED. And if you'll recall, there's actually a fairly significant list of courses that are required for nurses. They've completed their ER orientation at the Walkerton site, and now they're moving into the ER orientation in Chesley. Second novice has 71% of her courses completed with expectation to complete 2 more in the spring. She's orientating to a larger ED to get her volume and exposure to patients, and then transitioning back into the ER in Chesley with an expert RN on the floor. We anticipate that to happen in March. And our third novice has 42% of her courses completed. She's expected to go to a larger site in February, and then we'll transition back into Chesley with an expert on the floor in approximately April. I did want to point out that some of our challenge related to COVID is not just about COVID in and of itself. It does limit our ability to access courses for our nurses, so we can only get them in when they're available, and that has been very limited since the time of the transition. Next slide, Megan. And we have one intermediate nurse who was an external hire for us. She's completed all of her courses. She's new to the organization. So as such, she just needs a bit of time to help, get familiar with everything around the organization. And so we expect her to move into being able to transition independently into expert, in the spring of 2021. Before I turn it over to Jackie or Adam, I do want to let you know that we have, as I said before, we've had quite a bit of movement in all of our sites related to RNs. Currently, at this point in time, we have 10 regular part-time RN vacancies across the 4 sites at South Bruce Grey. We have had movement with the creation of full-time lines for nurses moving out of Chesley into other lines, and there's a few reasons for that, but we've also had nurses moving into lines in Chesley. So I'm happy to provide numbers if people want them, but there is a lot of movement happening within the organization. So happy to turn it over to Jackie and Adam.
Hi, I was just trying to unmute. Jackie, do you want me to lay a few things out or?
I don't know. How do you want to go? You're probably a better finisher, better closer.
Okay, okay. You have the floor. You have the
Okay.
floor.
Okay. We know it's been stressful not having access to the full emergency care 24/7, especially during COVID for the community. And while we've been fortunate not to have had too many cases in our area, we know that it's thanks to you, our community, who have been respecting the public health guidelines. And we want to thank you for your sacrifices and efforts. This has made our work at the hospital more manageable. It's helped our healthcare system from being overwhelmed, and it's protected our most vulnerable. So thank you again. And as I am optimistic about seeing light at the end of the tunnel with regards to COVID, I too am optimistic about seeing the changes that are being implemented, and the efforts being made to return our emergency room to 24/7 operation. There is a noticeable change in the work environment at the hospital. Staff are supporting one another more and working together more efficiently as a team, providing excellent care for our patients. The introduction of Sarah, our charge nurse, has been important in providing leadership, stability, and support for both staff and patients. And as Angela said, she's been fantastic. There's been lots of opportunities now for our nurses to gain experience, education, and confidence to be able to work in the Chesley Emerge with its unique challenges. And as Mike mentioned, our administration are advocating for us with the government and have submitted proposals to help support further changes to help us recruit and train and retain the staff that we need. So even though it's slower than we would like, we are making progress, and I am confident our Emerge will return to 24-hour care. Until that time, I would like to really thank the Chesley community for their patience and their support, but we'll get there. We are getting there. Adam?
Thanks. Well, I think that outlines the three areas that we saw from a physician's perspective. I would endorse the fact that there are a lot of moving parts in medicine and in a lot of professions these days, and the hospital is doing what can be done in those areas that can be controlled and addressed by them. So I absolutely endorse what Jackie has said about the atmosphere, and the culture has been improved. You see a more mutual support. I get the feeling that there's a sense of greater sense of direction in terms of patient care. I also absolutely endorse the notion that the charge nurse that we have has been an excellent choice and has been crucial in helping develop the atmosphere. From a physician's perspective, it makes sort of my job makes me capable of being much more efficient. And that just doesn't make things easier. It makes, I think, our opportunity to give care better. In other words, when we can get through the nuts and bolts of looking after people, that gives us more time to engage in the caring. And finally, the education piece that Angela and Jackie have well laid out, I think, is really crucial to continuing the development. So, as closer, if I could say, and maybe something that's a little bit aspirational, I think we're not only going to become a small rural hospital that's within a stable alliance, but a small rural hospital that's coping. I think we can become, and we have, I think now we're developing, I think, the talent to become a magnet hospital. And I think that's where we want to aim. And I think having that as an aspiration, I think, is something we should hold in mind. Thanks.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Jackie. I guess it's next steps are the next thing on the agenda, and I'll hand it back over to Mike.
Great, thanks, John. So just to recap where we are, so appreciate all the input from Angela, Dr. Wong, Dr. Winterton. As I said off the top, our nursing staff resources have not stabilized enough to return to that 24/7 operation, but that still continues to be our goal. And as we've said at previous meetings, we want to have full assurance that we've got a stable pool there, a stable pool of nurses before we open up, because we don't want to open and then have to close again. And that would be detrimental to the community. And we want to make sure we're ready and stable to ensure we can stay open once we do that. And just a refresher on Dr. Wong mentioned it and I explained it as well. We have made that submission together with the Clinton folks to the Ministry of Health around opportunities for funding to assist us. And that funding, there is additional pressures on small hospitals around keeping emergency departments open 24/7. So we don't have a big education program or a big orientation staff available to do this. We're doing a lot. People are doing multiple roles, so additional funding will certainly help us with that, and we'll continue to pursue that with the ministry. And again, we'll continue to keep the community informed as we're doing tonight. We would prefer that we could stop these community sessions and just get back to operating 24/7. It's better than having the conversations that we're having to have tonight. And I think Angela did a really good job of explaining that developing those skills and competencies of the nursing staff is an ongoing commitment. It does take time. It's not something that you switch on one time and you're going forward. It does take time to develop that. So with that, want to open it up to questions and comments from the community. One thing I didn't mention at the start with the folks on Facebook Live, and you'll see Madison has already done it. If you have a question and you're on Facebook Live, put it into the question there, and we'll transpose it or transfer it into the chat box here on Zoom. So you can see Madison has already done that in the chat box for a couple of comments that have come in. And last thing I'll say is we've got about 30 people on Facebook Live and 46 on Zoom. So about 76 people are participating. And often that number is higher because you have multiple people sitting around a computer to join in. I'll just want to recognize a couple people as well. Kevin McNabb, who John referenced at the start, has been here right from the start. He's the paramedic chief for Grey County. So welcome, Kevin, and thanks for joining. And so he's Steve's counterpart in Grey. Want to recognize Mayor Steve Hamill. I saw you earlier, and I know he was on. And then our foundation partners. So Lindsay Mannery, Pam Cookson. I can't see if others are on, but really appreciate the support of the foundation. And your foundation has done a lot in the last 2 years to improve the facilities of the Chesley Hospital. And we're just going through a major, another facility change to convert the boardroom that's on the first floor. So where we used to have meetings, we're converting those into weight rooms. So now people won't have to wait in the hallway. They have a weight room for respiratory patients and non-respiratory patients. So I believe very strongly it's better for patient care. And then we're going to create a boardroom space in the basement, which is better suited for administrative type roles like that. So with that, I'll open it up to comments or questions, and happy to any of us to answer them.
Angela, this is Sharon. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you had talked about the proposal that you have been working on for the ministry. I guess Mike talked about it, but you've been working on it. So can you give us any details about what you're thinking about asking the ministry for?
Absolutely happy to give details at a high level. We are asking for support for 2 nurses to be staffed in the building 24/7 for the emergency department. And that's the same. We're kind of making that pitch for most small rural community hospitals across the board. One thing that we are truly hoping to gain is the removal of restrictions on the new graduate guarantee program. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with that, but probably about, I want to say about 8 years ago, the ministry released a program that allowed us to hire new graduates straight from school and have them as a supernumerary nurse for 6 months. And then we would transition them after that 6 months into a position in the organization. When the program was originally launched, it was quite easy to move them into a regular part-time position. But over the last few years, the ministry has really ratcheted down on our ability to do that. And now they're requesting us to move them into full-time lines. And as you've heard me say, full-time lines are not that abundant in rural community hospitals. So we're asking them to remove that restriction. And it's been historically, it was a really great recruitment tool for us, but it also gave us 6 months really to train up those nurses quite well. We're asking for support for patients who are experiencing issues with mental health. So looking at potentially social work support for emergency departments, because we know from a nursing perspective, patients who come in crisis are challenging to deal with and challenging to help get into the right place. Trying to think what else. Oh, there's a number of things. We're looking at transportation and escorts, because we know that as soon as we ship a patient from one emergency department to another hospital, it automatically, for the most part, requires a nurse to go with them. And we're trying to see what can be done about that, so we can ensure that there's limited resources. And our EMS partners have been quite good to help us with that, but there's limitations from their practice as well. We're looking at making sure that the ministry funds a really robust orientation program. So while we're looking to do that internally, we want them to fund it, so we're not having to find it from other places. So really robust orientation for 6 weeks, additional ongoing competency for 1 week a year minimum in other high volume emergency departments. There's a few proposals related to support for practice. So practice leads and practice leads that can work collectively within the region to really support emergency departments in a rural perspective. I think that's the highlights. There's a few other ones around virtual care and again, additional ones related to mental health, but we really wanted to make sure that there's a robust proposal put forward that the ministry can really sink their teeth into.
So that proposal needs to be finished by?
So Mike and Andrew, I believe, are meeting with the ADM either the end of the week or the beginning of next week.
Okay. And any idea when they'll get back to us with any info after COVID?
Want me to try that one, Angela?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so we're actually not meeting with the ADM again. So he's asked for the submission, so we'll submit it. And then how they respond is going to be, what's going into the provincial budgeting process. It's a very small line in the big budget, but he promised to make sure that it's something that he would put forward to. And it's not just our two departments, our two emergency departments. There's a lot of small emergency departments that are teetering on the same spot of not having enough support. So they want to make sure that they try and be proactive and not try and reactive, such as they're doing with us with Chesley and Clinton. Angela, there's a question in from the Facebook Live, which you've really answered already, but I'll just ask it again and you can reconfirm. Any RNs that were in Chesley and went to different South Bruce Grey Health Center sites?
Yeah, I can actually tackle both of these questions that are there at the same time, I think. So since we had the reduction of hours in September of 2019, we have hired 6 external nurses. Of the 6 hired, 3 left, and to be frank, they left fairly quickly after hire. So we've been able to maintain 3 of them. And then we've had 2 more registered nurses leave who are, prior to the closure, they were novice nurses within the organization. We've had internal movement and internal into Chesley. We've had 3 nurses who posted into dual site lines. So 3 new nurses coming into Chesley. We've had 1 nurse leave Chesley to go to the Durham site, And then we've had 2 nurses from Chesley post into the ED only lines, and those have been paired with 2 of the larger sites. So both of those nurses did a Chesley Walkerton line. So there's been movement in and there's been movement out. And we expected that fully when we created the full-time lines that we did.
Thanks, Angela. So open for other questions. I'll just bring a note. I see John McPhee from Lisa Thompson's office, and I just got a text from Bill Walker, MPP Bill Walker, and Bill said he's on a cabinet call right now, so he had every intention of coming, but obviously cabinet calls, and if he gets off, he says he intends to join. So I'm sure Lisa's on the same call, John.
I believe it's been going on for a couple of hours. So
Yeah.
lots of talk.
Thanks, John. Yes, there's a few things going on in the province right now, so I can imagine cabinet's very busy. Leslie Hasty, who's one of our board members from just outside Chesley, is there a role for paramedics to be utilized differently in the hospital setting? So Angela or Steve or Kevin, do you want to speak to that one?
I can start, but I'm curious to know what Steve and Kevin might think about this. So I'll put you on the spot. While we were talking with here in Perth, there was some discussion about recognizing that nursing resources are limited. Is there an ability to incorporate paramedics into the emergency departments? And it's a very interesting idea. I think the challenge that we have, and I'm looking to you guys to really, jump in here and correct me, is paramedics aren't regulated, and so they have to work under very strict medical directives. So I think there might be a role, but I also think there's a shortage of paramedics, or I'd be worried about, almost robbing Peter to pay Paul. Not sure what you guys think.
Yeah, for a paramedic, they have to work for a paramedic service to be a paramedic. So that would be one barrier. I guess, ultimately, there's things you can look at around that, but ultimately they couldn't really work at a hospital and be a paramedic. And like you said, we're not regulated, so our delegation comes directly from a physician. A lot of our scope is looked at in the community now, preventing people from going to the hospital with our community paramedic programs. So we do what they call non-traditional roles, seeing people on a non-emergency basis to keep them out of the hospital. So we've really focused on that in the last 5 years.
In Bruce County, we just started our community paramedic program like 3 weeks ago. So we're hoping to get additional funding so that we can provide a program very similar to what Gray's doing. So yeah, we're just gonna hope that we get additional funding. Right now, we just have funding to the end of March, and yeah, we'll see what we can do from there.
Great, so I hope that helps answer your question, Leslie. And I see Bill Walker just joined, so thank you for joining, Bill. To bring you up to speed, we just did an overview of where things stand, and we are in the position that we are not ready to reopen to 24/7 service yet. We still are facing those nursing challenges, and Angela Stanley, our CNE, updated the group on some of the actions we're taking to get us back. And then we heard from Dr. Wong and Dr. Winterton about their perspective and desire to get back to 24/7, and we'll continue to work to do that. The question here for Stephanie, question submitted in advance for Stephanie. I've heard so much positive feedback regarding Sarah Norris, our new charge nurse, and she's an asset to our hospital in her new role as charge nurse. What is your role in supporting the staff while making them feel independent and supported?
Part of it is supporting and mentoring Sarah in that charge role. For her to do that effectively, that's part of that support. Other parts are helping to develop and implement the competency-based tool, rolling that out to staff, making sure that we tweak that as we need to, that meets our needs, trying to find opportunities for their advancement, helping them get time off for work to do their courses, Then there's quality improvement initiatives, and in our staff meetings, we're really starting to take that quality improvement and for our patient care and the staff culture and using that in our staff meetings to help develop tools and work on things that way. And then it's kind of that day-to-day stuff, the huddles. We do email updates in a newsletter form. Just it's hard to touch base with everybody all the time with shift work, and just helping to try and build the culture for accountability, the teamwork, and working as a team together to improve the culture.
Thanks, Steph. And maybe for those folks that don't know what a charge nurse is or what a charge nurse does, just explain why it's been so helpful to have that position in Chesley.
She, for starters, helps in that day-to-day, say, doctor's rounds. She can know all the patients. She's able to touch base with staff a lot easier because she's there on the floor, helps to support education and training. So maybe skill development right on site with specific patients where she can help them through that. She also has been taking a big part in helping with quality improvement initiatives. So we've been really working together and reviewing that stuff. I think that's it. She's just able to have a more frequent contact with the staff because of her role, and that does help in many areas to improve things.
If I can add something, I think part of what has been maybe lacking in our organization is our ability to support nurses into, moving into perhaps leadership roles. And I see this charge role as really one that does that for us. We have a lot of young, really talented providers, nurses, and there was never sort of this step in between direct care provider and manager. And now with a charge, it does give us an opportunity to coach and mentor leadership skills, which in turn, they can coach and mentor their colleagues as well. So it really does provide us with an opportunity to grow leaders within the organization too.
I just want to add what I hear about staff. I mean, we lost a really good about Sarah. We lost a really good emerge nurse when Sarah moved to the charge role. But from the physicians that come into locum, they say that having one person there every day, knowing the patients, knowing the staff, knowing what's going on within the institution has been invaluable. And they feel like they have one person to go to now, their questions get answered. And I would say the same for staff. They have the one person to go to that they build trust with every day. And the same with the patients. They see the same person every day. So the patients and their families have some trust in that person as well, because with Sarah's personality and organizational skills, she lets people know that she cares. And I hear that all the time. She really cares. So it's been the best thing that I think the administration has done, was to put Sarah in that role and create that stability and caring and consistency.
Thanks, Steph, Angela, and Sharon. And I think Sarah enjoys it. So when I talk to her, she's happy. I think she's lots to learn, but I think she's enjoying the role, which is always good. Okay, other comments or questions? Any other questions coming from Facebook Live, Madison? Okay. One person I didn't recognize.
Comment and a question, Michael.
Sorry, Mayor Hamill, go ahead.
Oh, thank you for that. And thanks for the recognition earlier. However, I will say that all 7 members of our council hear about this on a regular basis and are part of listening and hoping that soon we can have 24/7 in Chesley. Just looking ahead, I foresee vaccinations happening this spring and summer, and then a large volume or a large need in our emergency department in the fall. Is that a view shared by you folks, and a goal that we could have 24/7 when the volumes returned this summer, this fall?
Great question. Maybe I'll go to Dr. Wong and Dr. Winterton. Any thoughts on what the future looks like after vaccinations become more prevalent?
I imagine, yes, that hopefully as we get vaccinated and we can go back towards life as normal, I think people will be moving about more and we'll see more volume, definitely. And probably see it maybe even a bit more if things that have been put on the back burner start coming to the fore and people are more comfortable seeking care. But in terms of when we'll be ready to reopen, I don't know. I don't know that we have a projection for that at this point. I think that's more, I don't know. If Angela, do you have any projections?
This is one case where I really would prefer not to project, just because I don't want to give a date and then some things won't materialize. I think it's important to make sure we are moving forward.
Thanks for that.
I
That's
don't know if
understood.
you want, I don't know if you want my opinion. I was the one who said back when all this started, it was going to be a bump in the road. So, you know, it depends how you define bump, but it's really, I think I agree. It's really hard to say.
One thing I'll tell the group about is that different from wave one, in terms of what we're doing in wave two, wave one, right off the bat, we stopped surgeries, we stopped outpatient, a lot of outpatient work, outpatient lab, outpatient diagnostic imaging. And in wave two, when we have a higher prevalence, we're trying to keep all those surgery and services going. So we have all the extra things we're doing with COVID, but we're still trying to maintain services. And that's the same for hospitals across the province. And it's only those hospitals that are running into capacity challenges that they're, you know, ratcheting down some of their surgeries and services if they need to do it, and it's to free up human resources, nurses. But for us, we're still doing all the volumes we were doing in a regular business year of the hospital. So we're still trying to maintain service and still trying to respond to COVID, and we're doing it well. We just, every day we monitor, and Angela and her team make sure that we've got the staff to be able to continue to do that.
And people might not know also that, you know, that the organization has put extra beds in several of the sites. That has been that has made it a bit more challenging too with staffing in this time. So yeah, it's important not to underestimate how COVID has affected staffing for across the organization and for Chesley in particular.
Angela, you just want to, that's a really good point, Dr. Allen. We should have mentioned that earlier. Do you want to just speak to that, Angela, the beds we've added and how we're staffing them?
Sure. So we've opened 5 additional beds in Walkerton and 4 additional beds in Durham. And we've been able to utilize primarily registered staff to support that, but we've also opened up the shifts to allied health and PSWs. And so in order to maintain additional staffing for those 9 beds, we are flipping to a different model where we have additional support from non-registered staff as well. Doesn't happen very often, but they have really, everyone's really stepped up to make sure that we have the support necessary for the patients that we may see.
Thanks, Angela. And one recognition I missed at the start is Dr. Roth, our Chief of Staff, who's done so much for us over this last year for all 4 sites as the Chief Physician for the organization. So just want to recognize her, and she's also available, I'm sure, to answer any questions if they come her way.
Just a real quick point, what Angela was skirting around but didn't really come down on is we are doing our best at South Bruce Grey to help all of our neighbors wherever we can in this COVID crisis. Knockwood, we're in an area where people have been isolating themselves and been careful, and without jinxing ourselves because we're entering the home stretch, we've had it pretty good in our hospitals. because of our population doing the right thing. So we have accepted patients back from other hospitals that are too full because of COVID. We've accepted patients from nursing homes that need a little bit of help. I'm really proud of the administration at South Bruce Grey and them putting us forward as team players in this time of crisis. And I think that's the point Angela was trying to get at, that we've opened up beds, we're staffing them in a more team approach as opposed to a one-to-one patient approach. And it seems to be working. And hopefully, you know, as the comment, hopefully we'll get the immunizations and get back to business as usual. But between now and then, I think South Bruce Grey, all 4 sites, Chesley, Durham, Kincardine, Walkerton, can be pretty proud of what we've been doing.
Thanks, Dr. Roth. The question for Facebook Live: I really appreciate all of the people on the panel and the policy making and planning that is being implemented. Is there a role for having a current or past nurse on the panel to hear what they feel the solution may be? Want to tackle that one, Angela?
Sure. I think I think it's helpful. I think we engage with our current nurses. All of the work that we've done so far has really gotten their voice heard about what they feel is necessary. So if you recall, when I started in January, so a year ago actually, we did a lot of work with nurses at all 4 sites to really talk about the practice and what we felt we needed at each of those sites. And so we routinely keep them up to date and seek their input on a lot of things. So with current nurses, we are doing that fairly regularly. I think it's interesting to explore past nurse to see what might be possible. So happy to explore further.
Great, so still willing to tackle any questions that come in. Anything that's it's on your mind that you want to address, we're happy to speak to. Bill Walker, do you want to say a few words? I don't want to put you on the spot, but happy to have you bring greetings.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Truly appreciate it. And I hope my system's working okay. I sometimes have a bit of a technical issue, so I hope you can hear me and it's not all conjugated. I really just want to say thank you so much. Sorry I'm late. I was on a cabinet call and couldn't get off of that, but I wanted to be here. This is very important. I think I want to first and foremost say thank you to every single one of you who have done a wonderful job through all of this. Whoever just said, I think Lisa, perhaps Dr. Roth, our community has really stepped up and done the right thing for the most part, and we're very fortunate for that. At the cabinet table, we're trying to balance a magnitude of things. And frankly, it goes right back to what the bulk of the people in this call are about. It's making sure we don't overwhelm our healthcare system and make this a longer, more concerning, more stressful challenge than it already is. So everything we're doing is putting health front and center. It's done in concert with the medical officers of health and the command table, and we'll continue to do that. Hopefully with this stay at home, which seems to be bringing the numbers down, and with the vaccines, although there's obviously a bit of a delay in getting them here, we will get not too far down the road, most of this behind us and at least back to some semblance of normalcy. So again, to all of you, particularly our healthcare frontline workers, but to every single person out there doing their part in their own way, thank you so much. We are very fortunate. Can't tell you how stressful of a time it has been. I shared on Politically Speaking today, we've had 150 cabinet meetings just related to COVID. So that's on top, like all of you who are doing all of your regular work and then throwing that on top of it as well. So thank you to people, Michael, you and your board for keeping me in the loop, and lots of communication I think is fabulous. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions if there's anybody that has a specific one they want to throw at me. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Bill. Hey, comments or questions from the group? And Jackie's made a note here, and I was thinking the same thing. Sharon Musell is an important member of our working group for the Chesley ER closure. Great experience from a retired nurse and former chief nurse of Chesley. So agree totally. And you've heard me say this before. When this first started in September 2019, Sharon was very active and, interested in what's going on. And she's not a South Bruce Gray Health Center employee and not a physician. And we thought, do we bring her into the tent to help solve this? And she's been there right from the get-go and has been a really important voice for everything we're doing, and really good representative voice of the Chesley community. So we're happy to have her there. So thanks, Jackie, for recognizing her like that.
And I need to apologize because I just don't think of Sharon as being retired. So.
Okay, I'm always conscious of cutting this off too early and don't want to prolong it either. So we're at 7 o'clock. We've been here for an hour. I'm happy to answer any comments or questions. Lindsay, I'll just give you an opportunity. Anything you want to bring from the foundation perspective?
I'm just echoing what everybody else says. We know that your whole team and everybody involved has a huge workload to start with, and then this is just something for you to do in your spare time. And I'm sure that's fairly limited. And so thanks a lot for that. I guess, what's the worst case scenario? Is there a possibility that it will never happen?
I can give you my answer. And then I look for anyone else around the working group or from our board. The board's been really clear, as I keep saying time after time, that their direction to me and to our team is to get it reopened to 24/7. So it's not looking at other scenarios to do something different, but you need to be able to have the right staff in place to be able to do it. John, I don't know if that's a fair response.
I'd say that's a really good response. Just in answer to your question, Lindsay, the situation here in Chesley, my backyard for the last 10 years plus, is a regular line item on every board meeting. We get very up-to-date reports and status from Angela and from Michael. We keep our finger on the pulse. Our intention is to return it to 24/7. There has never even been discussion of anything other than that. Not sure how we get there or when we get there, but that desire is to get there. I don't think there's ever been any discussion other than that.
Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, so seems like the questions are drawing to a close. There's one good one on the Facebook Live. When's the next meeting? We didn't talk about this in advance. Our last meeting was September. This meeting's in January, so that's 4 months. So if we say late April, early May for the next meeting, does that? And we're happy to have a meeting any other time earlier if necessary, but does that suit the group, or do you want something different? Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Late April, early May. Not seeing any more questions. I do see MPP Lisa Thompson has joined. Thanks for joining, Lisa. We're just getting to wrap up. Any comments for the group before we close off?
Hello, that was for me. I was thinking I was waiting to hear from the Chesley community, but I just want to thank everyone for joining this information meeting this evening. I think it's really important to have this dialogue and have this chance to reach out to your board to fully understand the situation around the ER room in Chesley. And I know the board and the staff at the Hospital Alliance is working very hard to make sure all your needs are met. So the important thing is keep the dialogue going, and you have a government, myself along with Billy Walker, our entire team, with the Premier, we're looking at addressing how can we increase the number of people that will pursue such an amazing career in rural Ontario. That's something that's very, very important, not only to Minister Ross Romano at colleges and universities, but it goes without saying that it's very important to Minister Elliott and Minister Fullerton as well. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much, Lisa. And maybe we spoke about this before you and Bill were able to join from your cabinet call. Between us and Clinton, we're submitting a funding proposal to the Ministry of Health for helping us to get our emergency departments reopened at 24/7. And it was at the encouragement of Assistant Deputy Minister Mike Heenan, Assistant Deputy Minister of Health Mike Heenan. So we will be submitting that shortly, and hopefully it bubbles up to your point to your decision making at some point.
Yes, well, absolutely. And yes, it goes without saying this situation isn't unique to Chesley. We're experiencing it in Huron County as well. And we're really focused on helping you all get through it. So we look forward to that, Mike.
Great. Okay, and just one last comment from Dr. Wong's voting for April for the next meeting. So we'll aim for put that in the calendar for our next meeting. Last chance, any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll pass it back to John to wrap things up.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to everyone. I'd like to thank our panel, our contributors. I'd like to thank our questioners. I'd especially like to thank everyone who joined us online, be it via Zoom or via Facebook Live. But most of all, I would like to sincerely thank my fellow residents of Chesley and the surrounding area, the users of our hospital here in Chesley, for your patience. As has been explained to you, I think, very well by the members of our panel who have contributed this evening, this has been a difficult journey, but not one that we're shying away from. We're continuing to push ahead. The process, as I mentioned when I answered Lindsay's question, the process and the status of this is on every board meeting agenda, and it's something that the entire board tries our best to keep our finger on the pulse, because we are so supportive of moving back to 24/7. So I'll wrap things up. As a Maritimer, born and bred, normally at the end of a meeting I would say safe home as a greeting goodbye, but given the fact that we're all home, I guess that's not really necessary in this day and age. So I wish you all the best until we meet again. Have a good evening.